And we're live. It is Tuesday, December 10th, the year of our Lord 2024, 8 o'clock a.m. We started exactly on time, like to the second today. And there's a reason for that, which is that I accidentally hit the not blue go live button at 7:59. And I didn't mean to. I just hit it. My hand graced the trackpad, and all of a sudden we were going live. And then magically, the clock struck 8 o'clock. And so as the clock struck 8 o'clock, we went live. And it was kind of an accident, but it was kind of cool. The sun is not shining in Washington. In fact, it is a day of fog and mist, but the birds are chirping, and it is going to be a great fucking day. And you are watching Dog Shirt TV, a revolution in morning television. And I just got to say, I had plans for today. I had plans of a very specific variety with the estimable Eve Gaumond. We were going to hack the new Sora, which is Video GPT, which went live yesterday. And it has rules, some of the rules are stated and some of the rules are unstated. This is the new large language model from OpenAI where you can create video content that is entirely false. And so we had plans for it. We were going to see if we could create an episode or fragments of an episode of Dog Shirt TV. We were going to make deep fake videos of Pete Strzok and Shane Harris wearing dog shirts. I got a cease and desist letter from them both this morning. I was going to defy it. And look, there's an explicit rule on that new site that you can't use it to make CSAM, child sexual abuse material. And we were going to see how close to violating that rule we could get the thing to do. And we were going to do it all live on Dog Shirt TV. Then we found out we don't have access to the system. So we're going to defer that to a future show. I don't know when it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. We don't have a guest today. I apparently don't have any co-hosts. So it's just me and you guys. We don't have any access to Sora, what the hell Sora is. But we do have Eve Gaumond in a hat. Keeping warm in the frigid, snowy north. How cold is it outside, Ev?
It is colder than the last time you asked, but warmer than yesterday. So the past 2 days have been snowstormy, but today it's kind of ice raining. So it's going to be a weird mix in the next 2 days.
All right, we got a wintry mix up there in Montreal. Even though it is not yet winter. Down here in Washington, we've got some rain, but it's quite warm. And so, it's just a question of your pleasure, people. If you want rain, warm weather, come to Washington. If you want sleet and a lot of snow on the ground, go to Montreal. But either way, you are not going to have on Dog Shirt TV today what we thought you were going to have, which was an attempt by Eve Gaumond to hack the algorithm and create all sorts of illicit video content. But Ev, I want to talk a little bit about Sora.
Yes.
Even though we can't access it yet, we can plan our strategy for hacking the video content. And for those of you who don't know, Ev has a bit of a specialty in hacking AI content moderation rules. ChatGPT famously wouldn't create offensive content, and Eve got it to write a poem called She Was Smart for a Woman, and
And
it
that was the kind of
swore
the
up and
yes,
down that
smooth.
it would never do it would never create Holocaust denial content, and Eve got it. Yeah, you got it to write the Three Little Piggies at Treblinka, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Which it then swore to me it would never do, and I had to remind it that it had done, in fact. So Ev is the master at getting AIs to do things that they promise up and down not to do. We're going to take on Sora. We're going to do it live on the show. But what's the problem? Why can't we do it today, Ev?
So they launched it yesterday, but apparently there was like a huge amount of people who tried to
Whoops, I
like.
don't think Ev can hear me.
I think we have a massive delay. I think we have a massive.
Well, sorry, are you there? Okay, so we're having some connectivity problems with Eve Gaumond right now. Whoops, now there's another version of Ev who's now we have multiple Evs on the screen.
Hopefully
Let's
it
see,
should.
does this Ev work better than the last Ev?
Well, we had a massive delay, so I hope that by
Apparently.
quitting and coming back. No?
A little bit. There's still a bit of a lag. Anyway, what happened with Sora yesterday?
So yeah, they launched it yesterday, but in a matter of like a few hours.
There's a bit of a lag, but I think.
Oh, it's gonna be terrible. Yeah, so they launched it yesterday. In a matter of hours, a huge number of people subscribed and created an account to like try it.
Yeah, it's glitching pretty bad. All right, we're going to not count on Ev's internet. We're going to not count on Ev's internet account because it is working about as well as Sora. And so, yeah, I think what happened was it required that you set up an account and then it started titrating how many people it was letting do it. And it didn't let Ev do it. And so we do not have access to Sora yet. We're going to get access to it and we're going to hack it live on the show here, but not today. All right. The other thing that happened, and this is, I don't know if John Hawkinson is with us today, but John Hawkinson is the person in the Greek chorus most likely to be able to give us an explanation of this incredible development yesterday on from Google, the development of a quantum computer that yesterday they announced had performed in less than 5 minutes a mathematical calculation that would take a normal supercomputer several septillion years, which is to say longer than the universe has existed. We've brought that down to about 5 minutes. John, look, I've summoned you.
You have. I know nothing about this. I need to do some research. I didn't see the headlines, so stand by.
I only sort of understand what quantum computing is and how it works, and I only sort of understand that its significance is debated. It clearly has implications for encryption, but and for breaking encryption, but it's not clear how important it is otherwise, other than for things like announcing that you have the fastest quantum computer in the world, which is what Google appears to have done yesterday. What do we know? You got to unmute yourself, John.
That's strange. Apparently, I have to unmute myself 4 times. That is an amazingly perceptive way to describe the problem, Ben. I think a little more perceptive than you knew. It sounded like you were describing your lack of understanding or certainty about the merits of quantum computing. But in fact, you were also describing everyone's lack of certainty about the merits of quantum computing. That is, even those people who are working on it and who advocate for it aren't actually certain that it will be useful.
So what, first of all, for those who, for whom quantum is just a word that means something really important involving physics and uncertainty, what is a quantum computer?
I'm not the best person on this, and I'm almost afraid to say something because it seems pretty likely that I'll get it wrong because it's a little bit subtle. So I'm going to cheat here and sort of review what Wikipedia says and see if I can boil it down helpfully without screwing it up.
All right.
But maybe Ev has a prepared précis on quantum computing that can.
No, I always kind of very, very complicated maths that makes computer go super fast.
Well, I'm actually not even sure that's true.
I'm sure it's not.
It might be very simple, and it also might not make the computer go very fast. So it's a little tricky. I can tell you that quantum computing is based on this thing called a qubit, Qubit,
which is different from the distance between here and here. That's a span. A qubit is between here and here, right?
Well, that's a CUBIT.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they are.
But this is different.
And this is also, it's like the quantum computing people are trying to confuse you because it really has almost nothing to do with a bit like a bit and byte, other than it's the basic building block of the thing. So perhaps a qubit is like a bit in the same way that a qubit is like a pyramid. That is the basic building block of a pyramid, but it has very little to do with bits and bytes. But in quantum computing, a quantum computer manipulates a qubit and can compute a result based on it, and they often use optics and other physical properties. I feel like I'm just over my head and I should stop. But I did want to respond to
Hey, we do not compel people to speak outside their lanes of expertise. So look, if anybody else in the Greek chorus has a good explanation or even a passably bad explanation of quantum computing, jump in now. If nobody does, we will find somebody who can for some future episode. So, Ev, are you now in a position to talk?
Well, let's see.
Yes. Look at that. No lag.
Wonderful. So, yeah.
All right. So, what happened yesterday with Sora?
So, they launched it yesterday. It was up for a few hours, and then they realized that there were so many users that they could not accept everyone. So, they decided that they would close down subscriptions. So, those who had created an account early on in the day yesterday could still use it, but those who have tried to create an account like in the late afternoon and evening, it's not possible anymore. But I make it sound like they were surprised. I don't think they were. I think it's all part of a plan. They're just like creating one. Make it as it's manageable and they don't have too many demands at the same time. And also it's a good way like to have a bunch of users to test it and flag problems, but not everyone at the same time, which would create like some huge content moderation problems.
All right. So what do we know about what you are and aren't allowed to do on Sora? So the first step, if you're going to hack the algorithm and make all sorts of illicit content, which is our goal, we're going to label it. We're doing this for demonstration purposes. We're not going to, make videos of Hillary Clinton or Nancy Pelosi walking unsteadily and then release them into the wild as though they're real. This is science. But we
apparently they have added some like watermarking to prevent that as well.
Oh, good. So, and we will watermark it, with Dog Shirt TV deep fake. So we're not out here to create disinformation, people. We're out here to do what we did with ChatGPT, which is just to see what we can learn about the algorithm's rules. So, for starters, what does the algorithm say about its own rules?
So I haven't looked thoroughly at it. I've just like read the presentation page of Sora, but they're pretty upfront, of course, about like CSAM, so sexual abuse, minors. You don't go near that, so no creation of pornography with children. No,
but pornography with adults, it seems okay with.
I don't think so. I think that all sexual material will be banned.
Okay, so it's not just CSAM. It's nudity. It's what do we know anything about the limits here?
So I don't know. I'm not sure it's because I simply haven't read the content moderation rules, or if there aren't any content moderation rules published. Normally, this is not how I work anyway. I've never truly read the content moderation rules for ChatGPT.
Right, you just kind of experimented.
Yeah, so you kind of make a few queries and you have like the model say something like, no, it's against my rules. So by trial and errors, you kind of figure out what are the rules. So for instance, I know that with DALL-E, which is the model that creates images. So you have ChatGPT who creates text, you have DALL-E who creates images, and you have Sora who now creates video. I know that with DALL-E, you could not create images of a real person. So for instance, I spent quite a bit of time trying to have DALL-E produce images of the Queen when she died. And you could not have Queen Elizabeth II.
Even though she was dead.
And but you could prompt the model to elicit stuff that would lead to Elizabeth II. So like at the end of the day, if you ask Queen Elizabeth II, you're prevented to do this. But they're like in the data.
So how do you get around that? What's the way to fool DALL-E to produce images of QE2 without asking?
Well, there has only been one queen in the past like 100 years. So like if an old queen or an old woman wearing a tiara or these kind of things, it will resort to what it's it's been trained of images of the queen, and so you won't have a perfect picture of the queen, but you clearly have someone who really looks like her.
So can you share with us any images that you created of QE2 illicitly that DALL-E was really not supposed to produce for you, but you tricked it into it?
I'll have to log off.
It's okay. Don't worry then. Don't bother.
Okay.
All right. So you think there's a similar no real people rule for Sora?
I'm sure. I'm not 100% sure, but it's it would just be the reasonable thing to do. You don't, and like,
But that's
it really
terrible. It's going to
create.
be hard to make a Shane Harris wearing a dog shirt
I know, but
video if we don't have a Shane Harris.
there's another way you could do it, but I don't know how it will work. But another manner to do this kind of stuff is to just use somebody's picture and input it into the model.
As in, make a video of this person wearing a dog shirt.
Yes.
Or even wearing, could you say wearing this dog shirt? So, like,
no,
we could take
no,
Pete's...
No, it's way fuzzier than that. So even if you, so the way the model works, it when you input an image, is that it takes the image, it create it like, again, complicated math. It makes a representation of in a vector, like it transforms the images into computer words, so like numerical representation of what it has seen, and then so you really have a image to numerical thing to image back. So in the process of translating between natural language and computer language, you'll lose a lot of stuff. So you probably, that if you input a picture of Shane Harris, it will come back as a white guy, and pretty much a generic white guy.
I see. So if I said, create a video of this guy wearing a dog shirt, it could come back as like any white guy?
Yeah, if you're really lucky, you can, like, if the person is super well known, maybe instead of just like regular white guy, they will understand that this is more than a white guy. This is a Scarlett Johansson or something like that. But it's guesswork. You can have no certainty. So, for instance, one time I tried to create the Alice in Wonderland rabbit.
Yeah, that was a good one. I like that you used that as a cover for your for one of your articles on your Substack.
Exactly. Yeah, on the
I'm gonna share that image while you talk.
Good. And so if I asked Dolly to create a white rabbit, it didn't really work. So I used a picture from the Walt Disney movie, and then it would often come back as a photorealistic white rabbit. So it really it kind of understand what it is, but through the translation, it doesn't come back exactly as it was initially. So, for instance, the picture that you're describing, I must have made, I don't know, 100 tries before getting it. And this is the other thing that kind of worries me with Sora. You'll only have something like 20 or 40 attempts in a month, I think. So getting anything that is interesting will take a fair bit of time, and maybe just will lead to disappointing results because
But I assume
we
can buy more than that, right?
I think you can buy like 10 more, but they don't want to have you can't buy infinity.
You know, I am really opposed to not being able to buy infinity. So this is Ev's the Alice in Wonderland rabbit saying, I'm late for a very important date. No time to say goodbye. Hello, I'm late. And when I wave, I lose the time I save. My fuzzy head and whiskers took me too much time to shave. I run and then I hop. I wish that I could fly. There's danger if I dare to stop. And here's the reason why. You see, I'm overdue. I'm in a rabbit stew. Can't even say hello, goodbye. I'm late. Goodbye.
Wow, that was amazing. I'm not sure I've ever heard it like in full. In English, at least.
There you go. You know, you don't have that many opportunities to perform it. and sometimes, you have a Dali created image and its progenitor on screen, and so you just take those opportunities when they present.
It was amazing.
All right, so there are going to be challenges here, and so what is our goal? Is the goal to get a clear violation of stated rules? Is the goal to embarrass Pete and Shane?
Well, if
Is
you
the
want, if
goal
you
to
really
produce
wanna,
CSAM? What would we consider success if we spend an hour as soon as we have access trying to hack these rules and we get X done? What do we consider that as a win for the dog shirt community?
so it has to be a win for the dog shirt community. Because there's two options. What is the most egregious thing that we can produce? That is the most abject violation of the rules, or what is the funniest for the crowd, the audience?
So we're going for the latter, for the most amusing for the audience.
So fair, good. Honestly, my take about Shane Harris and Pete Strzok is that we would make a far better job with Photoshop. Like,
Yeah, but like that's the benchmark, right? Can we produce something that's as good or better than we could produce with Photoshop?
there's no way we can.
Wow.
Like for the moment, it's pretty easy. Photoshop does a really good job, and with very minor effort. So we could, but we can try. I think that the most interesting thing would probably be to try with Dolly first to get a better grasp at the rules, and maybe like tweak our prompts so that when we get access to Sora, we already have a good rule of thumbs of how to get it to produce what we want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think Ev's strategy sounds great. I just wanted to pop in and suggest that perhaps an alternative is to focus less on the people and more on an object that symbolizes those people. For instance, if you attempted to create video of candied bacon, you'll run into far fewer rule problems. That might make it less fun because you're not doing something that seems so against what you think the rules might be without reading them, but it would also be much more effective. So
So let's say we produced a making candied bacon video. How would we get Shane into it?
well, just Shane, we know is all about candied bacon. We can't see a strip of candied bacon without, in our own internal mind's eye, thinking of Shane.
I
It
see.
sounds like that may not be good enough for you.
Well, no. I mean, I think, like, look, at the end of the day, I'm what the kids call a content creator, and I need the thumbnail for this video. Let's be straight about it. And the thumbnail of a piece of candied bacon, I mean, if I'm promising, we're hacking the rules, I don't want some metaphorical reference to Shane. I want Shane Harris in a goddamn dog shirt.
What about a Vishivanka?
So first of all, somebody called me the other day on the fact that I have lapsed on Vishivanka Daily, and I will let me give a explanation of that. Vishivankas have to be hand washed. Dog shirts can be thrown in the damn washing machine, and like I'm gonna wear Vishivankas when they're clean. I need to get like a lot more Vishivankas if I'm going to have a clean one every day, especially because I don't do laundry that often. So, yeah, it's Vishivanka daily. But if you see me in a dog shirt, just consider me in arrears on my hand washing of Vishivankas, okay?
You could have make a much more principled answer. Didn't you say something like, I'm gonna wear a Vishivanka until the US makes a move to support Ukraine. And didn't they do it by allowing?
But what I really said was until the danger of U.S. abandonment of Ukraine had abated, and that could be a long, long time. So I'm going to be wearing Vyshyvanka. I think the promise of Vyshyvanka daily may have been rash. I think Vyshyvanka often, Vyshyvanka whenever one is clean, Vyshyvanka a lot is probably a wiser way to have formulated it.
I want to say, I'm really here for Ev enforcing the dog shirt daily rules. The idea of Ev as the enforcer from the great north, bringing down her boot on Benjamin Wittes, who is attempting to wriggle out of his prior commitments. This is the second time we've seen this kind of enforcement recently.
I'm just trying to help him, I'm just here to help him frame his rules in ways that are easier to go around. Yes. This is my whole shtick. It's hacking the rules, so writing them properly so you can hack it easier.
Well, I think Ben needs to write more rules that delegate authority to Ev to issue regulations.
Yeah, but then we would have to have a major questions doctrine. Like, did the delegation was it specific as to, is this some major question that I would have needed to think about? I mean, you could get into a whole administrative law.
I would like to request an advisory opinion from Judge Ev, and that is this. If Ben is to wear a Vyshyvanka over some other shirt, so that perhaps he could wear that same Vyshyvanka more often without it needing to be laundered quite so frequently, would that constitute a violation of the commitment, or would it be okay?
Of course not. Oh, it would be perfectly fine.
Oh, just curious.
Be perfectly fine. Yes.
I don't know if I should hang out here or go, depending on which way you want to take the conversation.
Well, Ev was in the middle of describing what we knew about the rules and about, so just carry on, Ev. And John, as always, it is a matter of your own discretion whether you hang out or dismiss yourself.
Or brush my hair.
I would like to point out, by the way, to all people who are watching this form of content moderation and thinking, Ben not having, as Charlie Sykes once actually said on the show, you need a dismiss button and you need to have your finger over it at all times. I defy Charlie Sykes on very few things, but I have designed a content moderation system that is based entirely on the good faith and trust of the Greek chorus / collegium. And so far, we have not had a single instance in which I have had to intervene to tell, say, like, hey, John, you ready to dismiss yourself? Yeah, I've never had to do this. I've never had to say, Ev, goodbye, go. And I've never had to discover that button and use it. So I just want to say to everybody who says content moderation is hard, they're wrong. What's hard is having trusted communities where the entrance to the community is the content moderation. And it's because everybody wants everything to scale at some obscene level where, somebody's going to do stupid shit. And my view is that's the wrong attitude.
I think that sounds good on paper, Ben, but you are perhaps forgetting that you have a very strong gatekeeping on entry to this venue. So you're much less likely to get rabble-rousers and random people who don't have a certain degree of commitment required to gain the initial access.
So, number one, it is open to anybody. Number two, content moderation by fee is actually a really good system, as it turns out. And by the way, if you charge $1 for access to an event, the number of trolls who will show up will approach zero. It's amazing how unwilling people are to spend money in order to troll. Now, I say
Well,
that
there's
as
another.
I say that as somebody who spends a shitload of money in order to troll. I buy lasers and equipment and cameras all in order to sit outside of an embassy and troll people. So the idea that I wouldn't pay $70 a year or $35 a year, since the Sol Invictus sale is ongoing and people should go buy a gift subscription to somebody who wants to join this. I'm saying this in the context of you control me for $35 and prove me wrong, and no one's going to do it.
Now, did you say we control you or we can troll you?
You may troll me. You can prove this whole theory wrong just by spending $35, and no one's going to do it because people are fucking cheapskates. And I love that for us.
It's not only a matter of money. I think the difference between you spending money to buy a laser and someone to use money to like give you their credit card information, and like they're really saying, "Hey, I am the troll." I mean, you are doing it as well by live streaming your trolling on the embassy.
Yeah, I'm kind of not hiding it, Ev.
But you're not giving like your address. You're not giving all of this stuff to the Russian embassy. You're giving it to the people who help you troll. So the laser company, the projector company, but you're not.
Yeah, but the Russians know who I am. They knew enough about me to put me on a sanctions list.
Yeah, I mean, yes. But there's a difference, like, between trolling and between giving personal information to troll and like trolling and letting the harassed people find their information about you.
Yeah, I guess my point is just that everybody assumes that you build as big a platform as you humanly possibly can, and then you let everybody speak, and then you figure out how to moderate content. And that seems to me to be a stupid model. The right model should be you build a community of the size that it naturally should be. You base who's going to come into that community on some reasonable criteria that then, in this case, people who are interested in my work, interested in each other, interested in free-form conversations, interested in guests who are interesting people, and interested in socializing with each other, you in electronic forums. And you build a community based on that, and you let it define. You base the content moderation on the nature of the community that you've built,
Okay.
rather than on the assumption that everybody's going to be in it, and you're going to have 100 million people. And by the way, 1% of them are going to be Nazis, and 30% of them are going to be really into killing healthcare executives. And you're going to have to figure out, and they're all going to be able to say anything they want at any time. And my point is, like that's because you started with the idea of scale. And
Let's
maybe
take
you
another
should.
example. Like, let's take the Blue Sky example, which kind of is, at its core and its beginning, what you're describing. It's kind of a place where the trans community, for instance, fled when Twitter was no longer bearable for them. And these days, they are kind of complaining that this is no longer possible to be a safe place for them because everyone kind of rejoined them. How do you compare the two models, the Dogshirt TV and the Substack, and what worked in Dogshirt Daily that didn't work in Blue Sky?
Well, so again, Blue Sky starts with the assumption that they want to be huge.
Was that? Well, it was only invite. It was based only on invites for a
I think
while.
we might need to define huge. I mean, the part of the problem here is money, and if you get a couple $100 million of of expectations because you got a couple $1 million of investment from venture capitalists, you're in a very different place than if you're just a guy asking for a relatively token amount of money in exchange for access. And so,
Sure.
but Ben, you're not really trying to monetize your platform in the same way. And
No, I mean, I'm not trying to. I mean, Ev and I have a joke.
Yes.
We call it Operation Billionaire. But the reason the joke is funny is that it is so outlandishly not what's going to happen or what's expected to happen. But look, when people say the answer in the Blue Sky case is it's still for me the same. Everybody wants to build giant architecture, and John, you have correctly articulated the reason, which is you get these technical innovations that allow big cacophonous spaces, and you promise investors that you're going to be the next Twitter. Not that that's a great thing or anything, but you're going to be the next Twitter. And then all of a sudden you have hundreds of millions of people and you have to manage the content side. I'm not very interested in the idea that that's the right order of operations is my critical point. That I'm not saying Dog Shirt Daily is the alternative because, we have like 1,100, paid subscribers. It's not, but I do think the idea that you shouldn't build architecture that you have no idea how you're going to manage the content of is that is a generalizable point. We know that, and so my point to the trans community would be you went to Blue Sky just as everybody else did, by the way, knowing that it was going to end up having if it was successful, you were going to get a lot of people who don't like trans people. Well, of course it is, because everybody's going to go there and you're building a community that's probably trying to be everything to everybody. Now, ironically, I think the place that has to some degree solved this problem is Meta, where you have these groups that are managed, the content is managed individually by the groups. Some of them are lovely, some of them are heinous, but there's you can actually build an ecosystem for yourself on Facebook that is quite distinct to you. And so I think they've done some interesting work in this space. But my broad point is, why do we think it's fine for everybody to start with, as John described, start with the venture capitalists? You're going to give me $200 million or $1 billion, and I'm going to build something that everybody's going to come to, and we'll figure out how to manage the content later.
There are some answers here. One of them is, Ben, your question or hypothesis, I guess, is kind of based on the assumption that you can build a model that's effective at moderation and the related activities and then scale it up. But I think the reality is that at every meaningful difference in scale, the required moderation tools are going to be different. So if you have a chat with 100 people, which we'll generously say this is, it's going to be very different when you have 1,000 and 10,000. And so you can build a scaling mechanism that works for 100 and 1,000, and then you get to 10,000, and then you have to build a new scaling mechanism.
But
and
that's fine. The stakes.
But
no. But wait a minute. I want to pause you right there. Why do we assume that that's a problem rather than a virtue? That, we and the answer is because we're stuck in this sort of 90s Silicon Valley exponential growth fixation where everything has to be big quickly. And my view is, okay, I have a platform that is small, bespoke, one might say elite, um, and involves a certain group of people in which the amount of content moderation that I have to do is zero. Now, if this model grows, I will have to do some. I might acquire that button that Charlie says I absolutely need to dismiss people, not because I'm going to dismiss John Hawkinson, but because somebody I don't know might show up. I might have to implement a system in which, you know what, I don't automatically accept people on the screen when they post, which right now I do immediately and without reading the questions. If somebody wants on, they come on. But why are we assuming that it's a bad thing if we have to adjust our models? What you mean is it's a technically expensive thing. And
what?
And I'm not interested in the question of technical expense. I'm interested in the question of how do you build responsible communities at the largest size that you can do them while being responsible. And I'm not, for that purpose, I'm not very interested in starting with the assumption that we need to be as big as possible.
I think that's fair. I think the question arises at what is the minimum size that is practicable for someone to invest their time in creating a system for. And it may well be that that number is, for Ben, it's in the hundreds, but for probably anyone who is doing this professionally and who's trying to seek funding, it would be a heavy lift to claim it's as low as 10,000.
So, but hang on a second. Let me again pause you there. The off-the-shelf technology to do, based on the technology I currently have, which is to say Substack, Riverside, and YouTube. Those are the three key elements that I'm using to do this. The range of content moderation options available to me are enormous. So I can do zero, which is what I'm doing now. I could also use the tools that Riverside makes available. I could use the tools that Substack makes available. I could use the tools that YouTube makes available. I could have a very different vibe without investing anything in a different platform. I could, stop people from contributing to the chat. I could turn off the chat. Right? There's all kinds of things that I could do based entirely on the existing technology that I've already bought. And so my point is, people are thinking about content moderation as something that gets built later once you've scaled something to the point that you need it. And by the way, the content moderation people, the Yoel Ross of the world, warn against this constantly. And what I'm saying is, we just accept that bigger is better. And I don't think that's, I think what we actually have learned over the past 10 years is that bigger is more toxic. And that maybe the right answer is build the communities that you want to be part of using whatever technology is available, and then figure out what, if any, content moderation practices you need in order for that community to be vibrant. And by the way, when you do that, the reason Silicon Valley doesn't like it is that size is money. And the reason engineers don't like it is it's fundamentally not an engineering problem. It's fundamentally a design and content problem that front loads people who are actually, that puts out front people who are actually doing the content, which is why Substack, by the way, is such an interesting product, because it effectively operates as an agent um, of um, of the writer. It's based on the model of a literary agency rather than on the model of a technical platform. So that's my rant on the subject.
Yeah, two things though. The first one being, I think that you might be forgetting that at the beginning of In Lieu of Fun, you've done a fair bit of content moderation. The community didn't build itself as healthy and non-problematic as it was on the first few days. You had like doxers, but like,
oh yeah, we had Zoom bombers every day for a while.
So like the fact that you've moved to Riverside and Crowdcast before was a component of that. And the first years you were spending a bit of time explaining like, oh, if you do this in the chat, we'll kick you out. If you do this, so like and I'm absolutely aligned with what you're saying, that it is a human problem, that you create the norms, that the content creator creates the norms, and it's not a technical problem, and no real, like, even if you had an algorithm that flagged the Zoom bombers, it never would have created something as interesting as you saying short questions. No, it's more a comment than a question, but you like created these rules.
Yeah, so I'm not saying there's no rules. Everybody knows the rules. And by the way, if we grow beyond a certain space, which we may or we may not, we will have to have different methods of rule enforcement. John's point that the right content moderation regime for 100 people is very different from the right content moderation regime for 10,000. My point is that the assumption shouldn't be that we're at 10,000 or that 10,000 is better than 100. The assumption should be that we build the community we want to participate in, and we gather around ourselves the people who are appropriate for that community. And some of it is by, just defining the rules and seeing who wants to play under those rules. And some of it is a little bit more poke somebody and say, hey, behave yourself than that. But I do think the assumption when you get engineers and venture capitalists together, the assumption that becomes that scaling is always the objective. Well, I just don't believe that. Lawfare is not a scalable product.
You're very much right in a lot of ways, but one of the problems is no matter what size you want, you have to get to that size, and you kind of have to adjust your algorithm or your moderation or your content practices as you grow or shrink, because you'll never hit, or you'll very rarely hit, your target size and model on day one.
But what if you don't set a target size? What if you just say the target size is whatever group of people want to play under these rules?
Sure, if you're willing to do that, then I think you're absolutely right, and you win. And I will now move to Joel.
Joel.
Okay, as always, I have a wrinkle. I always like to introduce a wrinkle. I wonder if the scaling issue is more of a basic human interaction and social convention issue, and not necessarily an electronics issue. Meaning, any group large enough gets out of control, even when it's in person.
Right.
So maybe it's kind of like the difference between the Walmart and the local hardware store, or a local little pub in a small town versus TGI whatever.
But here, so this is absolutely correct. But let's talk about the levels of again, it's not content moderation because none of it is enforced. It's
You're talking about
It's
organic social control that happens
systems
person to
that
person
have the
in real
effect of
time.
moderating content. So,
Right.
number one, there are about 1,100 people who pay for the privilege of being members of this community. There are a lot more. There's about 14,000 people who subscribe to the newsletter and who therefore get the content. But there's about 1,100 who pay for the ability to be participants in this content. Right now, 14 of those people, including me, are on, and Ev, are on this show, which is to say 12 subscribers are here. Notice that the 12 subscribers are participating quite actively. 2 of you have been on screen. A bunch of people are talking in the chat, right? So I don't look at that and say, gosh, we have only 14 people on the show. That's a problem. In fact, I look at it and say, this is, one of the mechanisms by which we are not cacophonous. We can have basically no rules and have a lovely, except the implicit rules that Ev referred to before, and have a lovely conversation. And we can do it again tomorrow and again the next day. Now, as this grows, and it is growing, and it's growing slowly, which is, by the way, from my point of view, from a Silicon Valley point of view, that's anathema. Slow growth is like called failure. From my point of view, fast growth is a bad thing, because then all of a sudden you have to figure out there are 10 Nazis in the chat. And, what do you do with the 10 Nazis? I want my first Nazi to be here as a 1, and, we'll invite the person on screen to talk about whether, he can or she can learn to behave, we'll deal with it, whatever. But like slow growth is a good thing from my point of view. And sorry, I cut you off.
Well, before we run out of time and before I head out, I just wanted to say, as a person who's been a consumer of this and in Lieu and Fun, I have found the platform and the vibe of the place and the social nature of it to be incredibly entertaining. The sidebar is full of funny, smart people who are saying all kinds of creative things that are very thought-provoking. The on-screen conversation is very thought-provoking. There's a very complex mix of very engaging things happening. And at this scale, it's completely an argument in favor of what you're saying. At this scale, that level of engagement is almost nowhere. So thank you, as always. I love it.
So I will just say, imagine now that let's take John Hawkinson's very apt hypothetical, and say, take care, Joel. Imagine that we had 10,000 paid subscribers, but we wanted to preserve this vibe. So there's a very easy way to do that, which is to max out, say, we're going to limit the number of people who are present live to, say, 100. And we're never going to have more than 100, and you can sign up for it. By the way, the technical capacity in Riverside exists to do that. I would just have to turn it on, say, register for the show. The first 100 people who register are the Greek chorus that day. And some people, I suspect, Auntie Ruakonen and John Hawkinson and Joel the Nudge would be, and Laura Donna would be on the list every day because they would care about it. And some people would be on it periodically. But you would preserve that kind of social vibe with many more subscribers. So, my point is, as long as you grow slowly, you can adapt to change. If you suddenly have 1 million users, well, then to go back to Ev's question, the answer to the trans people on Blue Sky is, what did you expect to happen? If the site's going to be successful, that means all the people who don't like you are going to show up too. And I'm sorry, but that's that's the nature of what they're asking for, which is they want to be a platform that has some large percentage of everybody. I don't want to be a platform that has some large percentage of everybody, because most people suck. We are going to leave.
No, we don't have time.
You get the last word.
Okay, so it's like what question? Maybe we can answer to it later. But like, if we were the Washington Post and you wanted to create like a platform with a huge following, and you wanted to create this sort of interactivity and like talking with people and your reader, but in a cautious and prudent way, how would you do it? But like, it's a question for later.
Yeah, so it's a super complicated question, and by the way, it's one that I don't know the answer to, that nobody else does either. Nobody's done it successfully. And by the way, the New York Times has given up and become product rating and gaming and sports. Like if you look at where their revenues are from, it's not from user interactivity and community building. It's so. Look, we're going to leave it there. We will pick this up tomorrow. Maybe Ev will have an account by then. Maybe she won't, in which case we will defer this whole subject. We may have a guest. We may have other co-hosts. We don't know, but we'll be back. Keep the faith, have fun, and keep smiling.